If I could ask just for everybody other than the board members to put yourself on mute until it's time to speak. That way the meeting will go by a little easier. Thank you.
Time having come, I call this meeting of the Brockton Housing Authority to order. Please note that all Brockton Housing Authority meetings are recorded. On behalf of the Board of Directors, Timothy J. Sullivan, Chairman, Ernest Pettiford, Vice Chairman, Janet R. Trask, Member, David Texera, Treasurer, Carol Roberts, Assistant Treasurer. We welcome all of you to the regular meeting. The Brockton Housing Authority will meet virtually on Thursday, February 25th, 2021 at 2 p.m. Due to social distancing guidelines related to the COVID-19 state of emergency, this meeting will be held remotely, not at the Brockton Housing Authority's offices. The public is invited to view and/or listen to the meetings via phone, computer, laptop, or tablet. To do so, download the Zoom Cloud Meeting app in any app store or at www.zoom.us. At 2:00 p.m. on February 25th, 2021, click on and join the meeting and enter meeting ID number 833-6444-3147 or use the link http://zoom.us/i/833-644-3147. You may also join by calling the conference line at 1-646-558-8656 at 2 p.m. on February 25th, 2021, and enter passcode 833-6444-3147, followed by the pound sign. The board chair will instruct participants on the appropriate time and manner for public comment during this meeting. I'm sure everyone has a copy of the agenda. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Tom?
I have the flag behind me.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have one more note to read from the governor. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and state of emergency, on March 12, 2020, Governor Baker issued an executive order temporarily suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20. Pursuant to that order, public bodies are temporarily relieved from open meeting laws requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate and alternative means. Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts. Carol?
She's muted.
Oh, Carol, you're muted and your camera's off. Well, let me move on. Commissioner Texera.
Here.
Commissioner Trask.
Here. Commissioner
Pettiford.
Here.
Mr. Chairman.
Here.
And Carol, if you can hear us, you're muted and we can't see you. She might have stepped away from her camera for a second.
Okay, we still have a quorum. Item 2, approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of January 28, 2021. Item A in your packets. Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Chairman, I've reviewed the minutes and I have found them to be in order. I would recommend that they be adopted as written.
Make a motion to approve the minute of the regular meeting of January 28 as written.
Second it.
A motion has been made by Commissioner David Texera, seconded by Commissioner Ernest Pettiford. Motion is to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of January 28, 2021 as written. A roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Texera.
Here.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
And Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Item 3, hearing of visitors. Any member of the public is invited to speak before the Board of Visitors wishing to be heard. They will be allowed 3 minutes to speak on each subject. The board will take any issue under advisement and respond at a later date. Total time for hearing of visitors will be limited to 15 minutes. Is there any hearing of visitors?
Any visitors would like to say anything, please unmute and let us know. I would say, Mr. Chairman, there are no visitors wishing to be heard.
Hearing none. Item 4, correspondence. Mr. Tebow.
The only correspondence this month is the narrow newsletter. There are a couple of things of interest. One is the governor actually put in a higher subsidy level for next year's budget for the state public housing, which is much needed. There's going to be a legislative day on March 23rd. If anybody would like to participate, it's going to be via Zoom. There'll be a number of speakers. I don't know who will be there. I know they've invited the lieutenant governor and a number of the leaders in the House and the Senate to speak. So if you'd like to participate in that, let me know and I'll make sure you're able to participate in that. And that's it for the correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Tom, what was the date on that?
March 23rd.
Okay. Any questions on the correspondence? Hearing none. Item 5, approval of the bills of the regular meeting of February 25th, 2021. Item B in your packets. Commissioner Texera.
Chairman, I did had a chance to review the bill for the month and everything seems to be in order. I will make a motion to approve the bill of the regular meeting of February 25th, 2021 as presented.
Second.
A motion has been made by Commissioner David Texera, seconded by Commissioner Carol Roberts. Motion is to approve the bills of the regular meeting of February 25th, 2021 as written. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Item 6, approval of amendment number 16 to the contract for financial assistance, work plan 5001, item C in your packets. Mr. Tebow.
This is a bit of paperwork that the Housing Authority has to do to accept the awards that we received from the Department of Housing and Community Development. You've been previously notified of the awards. We're getting $589,954 in our regular formula funding. That's to address the capital needs of our developments. And then we were awarded another $500,000 for the Kennedy Drive Creative Placemaking Award. So the board has to take a vote to accept the funds. So it's a very good item.
Susan, do we have to read that whole thing out?
No, just as presented.
Okay. We need a motion, item 6, from anybody?
I make a motion to approve the following resolution as written.
Second. Thank you to Ernie.
Was that Ernie in there on the second?
Yes.
Okay. A motion has been made by Commissioner Janet Trask, seconded by Commissioner Ernest Pettiford. Motion is to approve the following resolution. Resolution authorizing contract for financial assistance for state aided capital improvement plan 5001, amendment number 16 for state aided housing developments. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Mr. Pettiford, Commissioner Pettiford,
Yes.
and Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Item 7, appointment of receptionist. Item D in your packets. Mr. Tebow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I could ask Mr. Plouffe to speak on this, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tebow, members of the board. In November, we advertised in the Enterprise, the Patriot Ledger, the Taunton Gazette, and online through ZipRecruiter to fill the vacant receptionist position down at the Surgery Building. This position's been vacant about a year. We did not fill it during the pandemic because our doors were closed. It required other staff to have to pull the messages off the machine and to do the mail and the other duties of the receptionist. But in getting prepared to be ready to open our doors when that day comes, Mrs. Rose and her department decided it would be a good idea to have the receptionist on board and ready to go when we do open our doors. We received about 10 resumes. We reviewed them, myself, Mrs. Rose, the Director of Admissions, and then Linda Mallard, the Assistant Tenant Selection Supervisor. And we picked 5 to interview. We interviewed through Zoom. After the interviews, we selected 2 candidates to come back for a second, more in-depth interview. And after that, the consensus was to recommend to Mr. Tebow and to the board, Ms. Ricciardi, who's here today. As you can see from a receptionist, she has many, many years of experience as a receptionist. We asked her questions about that, about how to deal with difficult people, about how to deal with people having a bad day. She's worked mostly in the medical field, but as you can imagine, you're dealing with people coming in with problems and wanting to see the doctor. And so that's also a difficult place, same as ours, where people come in who are desperate for housing. Also of note with Ms. Ricciardi, which shows some real get up and go, is that later in life, she went back to school and got her associate's degree, which isn't easy, working full time and taking classes at night and online to get your associate's degree. So that weighed heavily with the committee also. So we can strongly recommend Ms. Ricciardi to the board.
We need a motion, item 7. From anybody.
I make a motion to appoint Melina Ricciardi of Lakeville, Mass. To the position of receptionist effective March 29th, 2021 at the step 1 rate of $41,844 per annum.
Second.
A motion has been made by Commissioner Janet Trask, seconded by Commissioner Carol Roberts. Motion is to appoint Melina Ricciardi of Lakeville, Mass. To the position of receptionist effective March 29, 2021 at the step 1 rate of $41,844 per annum. A roll call, Mr. Tebow. Any questions on the motion before the roll call? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Welcome aboard, Melina.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that she's a go for me. She went to Brockton High School, worked at Boston City Hospital, where I did too.
Oh, yeah.
And she's been working with pregnant women and babies and little kids. So I'd say she can handle anything.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, welcome aboard, Melina. If you were doing it in person, we would have a little applause for you, and we'd obviously want to shake your hands, and you'd get to meet the board members. So hopefully what we're going to do is, once this is over, because there's been several people we've brought on during this pandemic, we're going to have a big get together. And so the board obviously will be there, and you'll get to meet your coworkers. And I think that's coming sooner than later.
Okay.
Praying.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Melina, if you have 1 minute before you leave, you can stay if you want to. You don't have to leave.
No.
But if you do, I just wanted to say that we, on the board, we consider our tenants as number one, and we always put them first. And we realize that there's times when you can have a real difficult person. Just beware of that. And keep one thing in mind, that if we don't have the tenants, we don't need you, or we don't need me.
Right.
We got to have them. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Item 8, Executive Director's Report. Mr. Tebow.
I'll make
in
it.
your packet.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this brief. We continue to work under the guidance of the governor's orders. We hopefully will be going to increased operations as far as number of people in the office and that kind of stuff shortly. As you monitor the cases of COVID, you can see they're coming down throughout the state, throughout the country, and through the city, although we're still losing people almost on a daily basis. That's a terrible thing. We are vaccinating an awful lot of our residents and our staff, so that should bring comfort to people who would like to come in with working. Rent collections, our tenants' accounts receivable is up. We are taking steps. We continue to do that. It's not easy in this environment. The courts are still closed to the public. Everything's done by Zoom. It's very slow. I did give you a listing of the projects we're working on, the capital projects. I won't go over them. I'll answer any questions you may have.
And 12 families are being evicted?
No, 12 families have been sent to the attorney. So we then sent a letter that really says, this is your last chance. These 12 people never called us, and we tried to contact them 8 or 9 times by letter. They never responded. So this was sort of their last chance. Most people responded. If we go to court, the first thing is going to be is to get an agreement. But it's just like any bill collector. If you don't respond to your bill collector, they have to take the next step. But this seemed to have worked, but we're working through that. They also, the new stimulus bill, or the new guidance given by President Biden has expanded the assistance that our residents could get to help pay their rent.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, you're muted.
Is that it on the report, Tom?
That's it on the report. Yes, sir.
We need a motion. Item 8.
Motion to accept the Executive Director's Report for February 25th, 2021 and put on file.
Second it.
A motion's been made by Commissioner Carol Roberts, seconded by Commissioner David Texera. Motion is to accept the Executive Director's Report for February 25th, 2021 and put on file. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Item 9, approval of fiscal year 2020 state year-end financial statements, Exhibit F in your packets.
If I could ask Mr. Pacious to speak on this, please.
Sure, thank you. What you have in front of you is the year-end, our fiscal year-end financial statements for all the programs. But for the state programs, the Department of Housing and Community Development requires the board to give approval that they have seen the statements, the final statements through a motion. And, you know, once you do that, then we can submit them directly to the state. But overall, all the programs did as we expected. The state program did well this year, but it still needs to accumulate more reserves. But other than that, you know, everything, like I said, everything went according to plan as far as surpluses go. There were no deficits this year, which is fantastic. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions, Mr. Pacious, but I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
I counted about 9 or 10 surpluses, which I thought was fabulous. It's that's the total of $3,127,000, which is almost
total.
unbelievable.
Yeah. Yep.
Great
job. Everyone, you know, everyone did a fantastic job this year, from, you know, maintenance to accounts payable, everyone. You know, we present the reports to the management team every month, as well as the commissioners, and, you know, I'll point out things and, you know, people act on it. So you know, it's just, these surpluses are a reflection of, you know, everyone doing what they need to do.
Excellent.
Any other questions from anybody?
Just a comment. Thank you to the maintenance department, Mr. Vinny. They're doing a good job, because without them, I don't think we were going to see much surplus, because it comes from them. And to make sure that it's working properly. And again, I see it with my on site, the work they do. And like I say, I will take my hat off for Mr. Vinny and his staff.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much, Commissioner. It's one of the issues that we have, and we're maintaining things that should be replaced. And actually, the next item comes up to that, but oftentimes we're fixing things that should be replaced.
Yeah.
It seems like you're doing a real good job, Tom. Everybody in all the maintenance department, everybody in administration is doing great.
So thanks, Mr. Vinny.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey, Vinny.
We need a motion, item 9. You don't have to read that whole thing. Just all you have to say is so moved. I'll read it up.
Second.
And a second.
Second.
A motion has been made by Commissioner Carol Roberts, seconded by Commissioner Janet Trask. Motion is to approve the certificate of completion with notification procedures for federal and state lead paint laws, the top 5 compensation form, and on behalf of the Brockton Housing Authority, we certify under the pains and penalties of perjury that the facts and information provided in attached year-end financial statements and tenant accounts receivables applications data for the year-end financial statements and tenants accounts receivables applications data for the following programs: 400-1, 689-1, 689-2, and MRVP for the fiscal year ending 12/31/2020 are true, correct, and complete to the best of our knowledge, and that the statements fairly and accurately represent the financial condition of the developments in the Brockton Housing Authority for this period. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none. Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Item 10. Review and approval of Resolution 21-01, resolution authorizing the executive director to submit a Section 18 application for the deposition of the Campbell high-rise project 24-6 to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Exhibit G in your packets, Mr. Tebow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We do have two guests here to support this, to answer any questions. We have Ms. Margaret Moran, who is the Director of Planning and Development for the Cambridge Housing Authority, and Mr. Timothy Smith, who is the project manager. Just before we go on and have them explain what they know of the process, and they are really the experts at it and the leaders in the country. The Campbell high-rise was built in 1971-72 under a turnkey program. The construction of the building, so from the very beginning, was not very good. There were many problems starting off with how it was built. In fact, if you look at it, you'll see big, thick caulking on it because the building leaked from day one, tremendous leaks. Throughout the years, it's almost 50 years old now, and there are many, many things that need to be taken care of, and we don't have the funds to do it. So HUD has made offered several opportunities to do so, to address the capital backlog through what they call repositioning. And one of the ways is through this Section 18 Demolition Disposition program, where we actually take the building and we sell it. We dispose of it. In this case, we'll dispose of it to ourselves, to a like body, and then you project-based Section 8s in the program. That should increase our income for the building by about 30 to 40%. We take that 30 to 40%, we bring it to the market, and we borrow against that. And hopefully we can get the $60, $70 million that we need to put into the building. That's conceptually what we're doing. As I said earlier, the Cambridge Housing Authority has been a leader in the country doing this. They've done most of their portfolio, and they're planning to do about $1 billion in capital improvements to their program. So they know what they're talking about. They know the need for it. And if I could, I'd like to turn it over to Margaret to, if you could explain a little bit and then answer any of the questions that the board may have.
Certainly. Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Tebow, for the introduction and the opportunity to be in front of the Brockton board today. So as was reported, the Cambridge Housing Authority, I think, is in every housing authority has kind of been in the same boat, which is that we have property that's aging that has a tremendous amount of capital needs, but HUD has had very little resources available over the years. And so housing authorities have had to defer work that they would otherwise do if they had the funding to do so. And the list over time continues to grow and grow and grow to the point where you end up with a building, similar to Campbell, and very similar to the properties that we've had in Cambridge, where, the building's about 50 years old. We've been able to do a little bit here and a little bit there, but really nothing very comprehensive, leading to bathrooms and kitchens that are 50 years old, to pipes in the walls being very old. And that, despite really, I would say, heroic efforts on the part of the maintenance and management team to keep putting Band-Aids on the building, it reaches a point where it really needs to be fully renovated and updated to address the long list of deferments that have happened. It's basically, everything kind of catching up to themselves. And so I think at this point, over 96% of the housing authority's units in Cambridge have transitioned out of traditional public housing. And HUD doesn't give you too many opportunities or options to go down. There's basically just two right now. One is the rental assistance demonstration, RAD, and Cambridge used RAD for about half of its portfolio combining that with some flexibility we have as a moving to work agency to make the numbers work and to actually fund the rehab. But over the last 5 to 6 years, we've been doing exactly what is proposed here for Brockton, which is to transition our properties out of public housing through the Section 18 process. And in doing so, triggering full value tenant protection or Section 8 vouchers to do so, finding that that's the only really tool available to do and fund the deep renovations that a property, you know, comparable to Campbell, but in Cambridge would need. And so we've put together successful applications for, I think we're up to 7 of our properties, most of our larger properties fitting into the Section 18 category, and getting approved by HUD, and then subsequently getting the Section 8 vouchers to fund, really, as was referenced, about $500 million of deep renovations to the Housing Authority's portfolio. And we've been reporting to that, to our colleagues in Massachusetts. And I think any number of folks have come knocking to figure out how it is that we've been doing. And so we've been working with a number of housing authorities to look at potential path forward, whether it's a RAD path or Section 18 path or a blended path, to help housing authorities kind of figure out really how to protect and preserve their deeply affordable units as represented by Campbell or by any number of your properties or Cambridge Housing Authority properties. And the best means to do so is to try to find the funds to make those deep renovations and to do it in a way that maximizes the Housing Authority's continued involvement and oversight of the building of the assets. And that's really been the model used in Cambridge, and I think the model that your team at the Brockton Housing Authority has really impressed upon us as wanting to pursue. And so as part of an intergovernmental agreement between the Brockton and Cambridge Housing Authorities, we've been working with the really very accomplished Brockton Housing Authority team to take the steps necessary to determine, one, if the buildings at Campbell would meet the HUD requirements or thresholds to be considered obsolete, and 2, then to document that and prepare an application for your consideration and possible submission to HUD. And I'll let Tim go into a little of the detail of our findings, but obviously the fact that we're here with an application indicates that we did, in our estimation and the estimation of the architectural and engineering teams that have viewed the building, feel like it meets HUD standards to be an eligible to apply and hopefully deemed a successful application to move forward and get the additional resources that would be so beneficial to Brockton in terms of being able to move forward with a really solid and much needed renovation plan for Campbell. But I'll stop for the moment and then turn it over for Tim to talk a little bit more specifically about the findings.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having us. Like Margaret said, we've really enjoyed working with the BHA on this project and hope we have a chance to work on some more projects together. It's a great team. Any building that's 50 plus years old is going to suffer wear and tear, and you'd expect that. And as Margaret also said, we always feel a little sensitive around going into a building and criticizing the work of people who are trying, between Vinny and Chris, trying so hard to keep things together. And so when we are critical, it's for the benefit of the project and for the BHA, and is not intended at all as any kind of criticism of the maintenance and modernization staff. They're as we found with a lot of housing authorities, they're doing incredible work with the resources that they have. So as Margaret intimated, we hired an architect who in turn had a team of engineers. We had a very thorough and multidisciplinary team to look at the building, because that's what it really required. Steve Baker from BWA Architects hired a couple of engineers, and they came in, and our approach was basically to take a very close look, not just walk through the building in an afternoon and, you know, buzz through and say, yeah, it needs some work, but to really dig down and get into some of the details, some of the systems, some of the assemblies of the building itself. And so several site visits, and then some, I'll get into a little bit briefly on some of the testing that we recommended on some of the systems that bore out some information as well. So it's all in the report. I encourage you to read it if you're, you know, looking for something to, some good reading material, but I can't guarantee it'll keep you awake, but it's a lot in there. It's a lot of materials in there. And but I'm just going to try to hit the high points here, just to be brief as possible. So the things that, you know, would be most obvious to anyone visiting the building are not that unusual for a building this old. Like I said, you know, the general finishes, a lot of the doors, a lot of the hardware doesn't meet current handicapped accessibility. Kitchens and bathrooms are pretty worn out. I think 25% of them have been, you know, being renovated on turnover, but still most of them are pretty worn out. And these are conditions that really affect the lives of the residents. You know, I think that, yes, people are living there, but there's an opportunity to make it so much better for them as we think about not just repositioning the building for refinancing to make these renovations, but to really think about repositioning this building for the next 30 or 40 years, which we don't think it's going to last at the rate that it's deteriorating. So it's in rough shape. You know, things that are not as obvious as paint and doors and things like this is, you know, things that you start to take a little closer look. The roof, for instance, I think the roof blew off last year or the year before, hasn't been replaced. So the roof is in really rough shape. We looked at and the roof is part of the envelope, what we call the envelope of the building. So it's the roof and then the siding. And the balconies are all, the balconies were never really, I don't think, originally designed for this building. I think they were added on, or we found out they were added on at the request of the fire department. And so there wasn't a lot of consideration of connecting in a way, connecting to the building in a way that wouldn't keep the water out. So we saw some water penetration issues. And the siding itself is a transite panel, which is a extremely durable panel. It's a sandwich. It's an insulated panel, but it's made with asbestos. It's not friable in the sense that it's not flaking off asbestos into people's units. But when it cracks, and there are many cracked panels and a lot of delamination happening with the finished materials, it's very hard to repair because it is an asbestos material. So, you know, we looked at that. We uncovered some existing construction. We were fortunate that the structural engineer is retired and living in New Jersey, but I was able to find the structural drawings for the building. And we, as part of the team, a structural engineer, local guy, came in, took a look at the drawings, and then suggested that we open up some areas, do some selective demolition, expose some of his suspicions that the building, you know, perhaps wasn't, it's certainly not going to fall down, but it's just a little undersized in terms of what would be built today. So when the wind blows, there's a little feeling of movement. And furthermore, we learned that during construction, the quality control may not have been as good with the steel frame itself. So a lot of welds, you know, keeping welding the deck, the steel deck onto the steel members wasn't consistent, and that's what provides sort of the rigidity to the building. And so again, it's been standing for 50 years. We don't think it's going to go anywhere, but if we were going to invest a lot of money, we'd want to certainly take care of that. So that's just another aspect of the project. We looked closely into the mechanical. I'm going to pause there just for a second, see if anybody has any questions so far. I don't want to just ramble on here. So any questions so far? I'll just keep going.
Bye.
Okay, that was Tim. Okay.
I just wanted to add that your presentation, Mr. Smith and Ms. Moran, that you gave to us was really wonderful, and I commend you both for that.
Okay. Thank you, Janet.
What day was that? That was
a week ago Tuesday.
Yes.
It seems like about 3 years ago, but that's what it was.
It does.
The COVID time, right?
But it was very comprehensive and very impressive. So thank you for that.
Well, sure. Let me finish. I'm about halfway through, so I'll just finish up quickly. But one thing we also looked at, and you know, the things that you start to look a little closer, it starts to lead to other things. Like we looked at plumbing. Plumbing's been an issue. These are 50-year-old cast iron and copper. There's a lot of pitting and deterioration of some of the joints, leading to a lot of leaking. And when you look behind some of the walls, you realize that the fire protection or fire protection between units wasn't there. So, I mean, there's that aspect of it too. The building is sprinklered, but there are things that would have to be definitely brought up to code once we start putting some money into this building. So it's good that we're finding this stuff just so we know what the actual costs are. There are some things that are known by testing. We scoped the existing sanitary lines. I think they went up on the roof, dropped a line down, and they got about, when it hit the 90-degree underground sweep of the drain, it was blocked. You know, they couldn't go any further. So we think that that's, you know, just a condition of, it's probably still draining, but not at the rate it needs to do, or it needs to drain. We tested the fire pump, which the water pressure, there's some water pressure issues in the fire standpipe. And then on top of that, there's a lot of hazardous materials in the flooring, in the wall compound, the joint compound to finish off drywall is loaded with asbestos, which was a very, very typical thing to find in buildings built around this era, because it was before it was banned, and it was a very durable material. They would just, people would throw asbestos into the joint compound because it was very hard. It was a great building material, but it was horrible for people, but it was great for buildings. And then there's other things we know by periodic events. The flooding concerns. There was a flood several years ago where they had to sandbag the entrances to one of the buildings in particular. And on top of that, there's a transformer right outside the building that is within the flood area. There's a flood zone that both buildings are part of building A and all of building B, I think, are within this flood zone. And that's another concern, is to figure out as much as we can with the city, how do we fix this? How do we deal with this so we don't, if that transformer or the first floor electrical equipment ever got wet or in a flood, it could knock out the building for months, in which case you have 199 people looking for housing. So that is certainly a big concern as well. And then things that are known just through the maintenance reports that Chris and Vinny keep, plumbing leaks on the 10th floor that damaged electrical panels. So it's not just water dripping down and damaging drywall, but it's affecting the other systems in the building. And finally, things that are known through analysis and experience on similar projects. And, what are some of the things that the local building department would require us to do under these circumstances? And as much work as we want to do to correct in this building, would it trigger other things? So there's some experience, with regard to code compliance. And some scopes of work items that are related directly to upgrading fire alarm systems, sprinklers in this case, and some other building code items. There could be a number of them in the building. So I'm going to stop right there. And that is the synopsis of a very long report, a lot of information, a lot of detail. It's adding up to about $80 million. The cost of just the hard cost of being able to fix up these buildings, which is about $200,000 a unit. So in round numbers, that's kind of where we are right now.
And I'll just jump back in. And so, with that report and that finding of $82 million, then HUD allows for certain added costs like the A&E fee or contingency. So it brings the total cost that would be in the application of up to $106 million. We then compare that cost to what's called the total development cost that HUD publishes to see how it relates to the disposition or obsolescence threshold standard. And so to meet HUD's definition of obsolescence, a property would have to have immediate modernization needs of 62.5% of that total development cost. And how it's calculating out for Campbell is at 123% of cost. So it more than comes close to almost doubling the threshold requirement to be eligible for consideration for obsolescence. And so that's, again, the numbers are comparable to numbers we've seen in Cambridge. We've seen some right around there. We've seen some a little bit lower. I think we had one that was a little bit higher. Some of the same things that Tim mentioned are the same conditions we experience in Cambridge, the asbestos in particular, with it being in our joint compound and in our flooring, in our ceiling textures, resonates. The age of our pipes, just the overall how worn things are. All of those things are just the things that, as a housing authority who hasn't had a lot of money, we've, again, all of us have been very effective, as your team has, in terms of putting Band-Aids on gashing wounds. And at some point, the wound gets to be too big and you got to figure out a path forward. So I really commend the Brockton Housing Authority team to start this process and these discussions, and to try to bring the additional resources that Mr. Thibault referenced at the beginning to Brockton and to the property that would allow for a potential future funding of plan to move forward with the renovation of the building. Really, as I said in my earlier section, to protect and preserve what you have. It's been a valuable resource to the Brockton community, to many generations of residents. And I think collectively, for those of us who have worked in the field for a long time, we want to see this resource protected. We wanted to see it preserved and available to future generations in the Brockton community, in particular for Campbell. So I'll stop there and see if folks have questions, or maybe Tom, you might have other things you might want us to cover that we didn't manage to get out, besides both Tim and I being always willing to talk forever.
Don't go there.
I have to say, Tim's nitty-gritty description of the building doesn't sound too appealing for a prospective tenant.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that it's if you walk into some of these units, the way that they're cleaned up, we saw one that had just been cleaned up. The maintenance guys do a great job. I mean, some people are desperate for housing, for one thing, and the other thing, it's the things that you can't see. It's the things that we are concerned about are really at risk of failing. The air systems is this rooftop unit that you can see from the ground that is maybe on its last legs. We don't know. It's still providing air. It's not providing air in the way that it should be, but it is providing some air, but that's going to die eventually. So it's just the culmination of big ticket items that the annual capital funds that are allotted to the BHA and other housing authorities just can't touch. You do the things that are right in front of you that you can fix and make habitable, but it's the other things that you can't touch that suffer. So BHA is not alone in this by any means. This is across the country, which raises a whole other issue of should have an infrastructure week discussion or something like that someday about just public housing alone. So
yeah, and I would say that that we did have an opportunity to go into a number of vacant units that were ready for reoccupancy, and they're shining. The floor is shining. Your team has gotten them ready for the next folks. It's kind of some of the hidden things that you can't see. I mean, and even the lobby areas have been updated and brightened and made really nice. And I sort of share sometimes a story that happened to us in Cambridge, where, we've had a number of housing authority professionals visit, but we've also had housing authority residents visit. And for some reason, which you'll have to go another time to explain why, but the New York City Housing Authority sent a busload of residents up to Cambridge Housing Authority to see what we were doing, to kind of get them to say, all right, this change is an okay change and look what positive it can do. So we took them to our worst building that we were just getting ready to start construction on and showed them a unit that was ready for occupancy. And they were so blown away because it was better than anything they have going in New York City. And we're saying, no, this is our worst building. So then we got back on the bus and went, 2 miles away to a building that was just nearing the end of completion to show what we did. Basically taken what had been kind of a comparable building just a little bit further along in construction and showed them a completely renovated building and unit. And if they thought the stuff that needed to be renovated was good, I mean, they basically said, we don't want to leave. Was one line, and the other line was, we didn't want to let me off the bus because they wanted to take me back to New York City, but I'm only one of the solutions that Cambridge offers. But I think, it does speak to, what housing authorities have been doing, which is really doing the very best to provide the best housing they can. And, you haven't been disappointed with your team in Brockton in terms of their ability to do that. But the detail is really behind the scenes and is, I think, really the critical infrastructure piece that all of us who really care passionately about public housing really don't want to lose. We don't want to lose what resources we have.
Again, kudos to Mr. Vinny and his team.
Yes, indeed.
I do want to just address the issue about the livability that Commissioner Trask brought up. It is an issue that we've known about for some time. I know, Mr. Chairman, you were on the board. I think others, obviously Mr. Pettiford too, when we approved the contract to do the lobbies over. And the lobbies we did over because we knew how dingy the building was, and we knew that we did not have the capital to take care of all the problems. So we wanted to at least have our first impression to be better. And so that's why that was done. But we've known this has been an issue for years and years and years. It's finally, we've had finally a program is available that allows us to address it. And I'm hoping we have a positive response to our application. I think we will, based upon the information that has been provided by Margaret and by Tim. But I do think I'd like to open it up and see if the board members do have any questions about the program at all. We know Campbell needs work about the program and about the process if we do submit an application.
I have a couple of questions for Margaret or Tim, either one. The scary part of this whole thing is the name, the Section 18 demolition. That's the one thing we don't want to see, that those two buildings be demolished. I wish they could just change the name to something else. It's scary.
I was going to say that's funny because I've said the same thing at public meetings all the time, because both the word demolition and then then the slash is usually disposition are really scary words for housing authorities and for the residents. So when the application goes in, they ask, two questions. One, are you demolishing the building? Is your plan to demolish the building? And you say yes or no. So the answer here would be no. And then that puts you into this disposition category, which Mr. Thibault referenced, which has the housing authority selling the property to another housing authority controlled entity as the vehicle to take advantage of those full value Section 8s. But I agree with you. The naming of this is poor, and it has everything to do with the Section 18 itself is a reference to that section in the U.S. Housing Act of 1937 as updated by various different amendments over the years. And that's how they categorize it. Unlike some of their other programs where they've done Hope 6, which is a very positive name, or Choice Neighborhood, or even the rental assistance demonstration program, which nobody quite understands what it means other than it being rad. But I agree with you that the nomenclature of this is frightening. And that's what I say to my residents all the time.
Margaret, could you just give me a yes or no answer that there is no concern that this building would be demolished by anybody?
To my knowledge, the answer would, I think everybody's expectation is that it would be rehabbed, you know, based on the reports. Yes. Okay. So the answer would be no, I don't think there would be a demolition here. So as you're aware, there's almost 400 apartments on there. So there's close to 500 or 600 people involved. Right. Yeah. We can't displace those. So now what happens when you're talking about asbestos in the drywall? Mm-hmm. The people have to move out, or how is that going to work?
Want to take that, Margaret? I'll give it a shot. You film it, do the color commentary. The relocation plan is it's something that we've had to deal with our projects too, Tim, because we can't clear out a 300 unit building and do all the work. And so it's really been we're definitely planning on some kind of phased approach. We've been able to, we've discussed with the BHA the idea of when people move out of, over time, over a year, people will be moving out, whether passing on or finding another place to live. And we would probably mothball those units, just hold them for now. So we're not putting people in that would, be further displaced when construction would start. And so we'd have a sort of a pool of vacant units within the development. Furthermore, I think the idea that BHA and we've used before, BHA has mentioned this in the public meeting the other night, was having hotel units within other developments that people could move to, either temporarily or the idea would be that if they're hotel units, they'd be temporary, and then they could move back to Campbell. So that the trick is not doing one unit at a time, because you'd never get there and it'd be too expensive. But how do you phase a renovation project within two buildings? Do you do it by floor? Do you do it by stack? At one building that we have right now that's under construction, we've been able to successfully do it by floors. And so the separations of asbestos and abatement activities are completely contained within that floor. And so there's no cross-contamination. There's no air moving between the floors. And we have hygienists on the lower floors occupied taking air samples all the time to make sure and ensure that that's the case. So it's possible to do occupied rehab, but not have people living in the units themselves. You'd have to clear out a series of floors. And, I think there are, 24 floors there altogether, Chris, something like that. So, I mean, it's, you do 3 at a time, you do 4 at a time. That remains to be seen, because it also has to work with this puzzle of, minimizing the number of moves people have to make, mothballing units when they become available, creating hotel units off-site. Some people may move off-site and never come back. So it's a very it's complicated. I've heard you guys are really good at relocation. That's what I hear. Maybe not at this level. So there are people, firms that help with this that we've used a lot. We also do our own organizing, but there are people that do this for a living that are very, very good at it.
And with COVID, you'd have to put that off for some time, correct?
We're not going into construction for a while. Probably a year and a half, 2 years at the very earliest, I would guess. So there's no immediate threat to people there. Construction and relocation is extremely stressful for elders in particular. Just can think of ourselves here, and for some of us anyway, including myself, that being asked to move somewhere temporarily, what they get in return. We have to preserve these buildings in some way, and what folks get in return almost makes it worth it. But there's no doubt that it's very stressful.
If I could ask,
it has to be done sensitively.
Commissioner Roberts, did you go through a relocation?
Yes.
Could you tell us how it worked?
Okay, I went to a conference that was held in Charlotte, North Carolina, because they were in the process of doing their housing the way you're looking at doing it here. Mm-hmm. There was a tour of the housing site, and a lot of the people, we got to talk to them about what how they felt about it, what their concerns were. And the majority of the people had to be relocated in order for them to do the project. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the people were like upset. I don't want to move. I don't want to, you know, I'm not moving. I'm not doing this. But the bottom line, when they did relocate them and they did their building, what they did to the building, you thought you were coming back to a condo. Mm-hmm. And some of the people, when they relocate them to other places where they had made arrangements where their rent would stay the same, they had the choice to stay where they were at. Yeah. And some of them didn't want to go back, even though it was, you know, they said, hey, I'm comfortable where I am. I like where I am, so I'm going to stay there. The rent was going to be the same, the way housing has always, you know, did it. Mm-hmm. And we saw the actual building that they were going to do. And there was no way for the building to remain standing. I'll put it that way. Mm-hmm. It was dilapidated. Mm-hmm. And that's why they had to really move the people out. Yeah. And, you know, there were a lot of questions, but I really, you know, was glad that I was exposed to it, because I figured if it's happening in other states, Massachusetts somewhere along the line was going to be doing it. And I know Cambridge had done it, because I had heard about Cambridge doing it. And I just was wondering, you know, where else was it going to be done? And so when I saw it in Charlotte, North Carolina, it really was beautiful. They were also in the process of doing the housing authority in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Well, Chicago has a huge housing authority, like New York City. Mm-hmm. They showed us the floor plan for the Chicago housing, new housing. Now, this was a combo of low income. It was low income and mixed. So you had market value living with low income. Mm-hmm. You had businesses also inserted in that. Mm-hmm. You had family on the site. It was a huge site. But you know, anything you build in Chicago goes up, straight up, like New York. Mm-hmm. So you're talking about high rises that are at least 30 floors to them. Family complexes that were at least 8 floors on them. They had playgrounds in there. It really, I mean, and we were talking about hundreds of millions, you know, I mean, hundreds of millions of dollars to do that project. And it was really interesting because I met the Chicago Tenant Association people there, and their tenants association is made up of 40 members. That's how big it is, in order to run the whole organization and the complexes. So I was really impressed. And I think if we just get the word out there and educate the people and let them know that this is the best thing for them. That sometime, in order to fix it, we really have to kind of tear it apart to do it, because you can't keep putting a Band-Aid on the hole, because it gets bigger and bigger. And I have been talking about this to my tenants here at Caffrey Towers long before you guys would, you know, because I've seen it, and I was just giving them a heads up that things are changing. Things are costing the housing authority more money than they're getting to do their job. And they're doing the best they can with what they have been given. And they've been doing a wonderful job. And I give them kudos on that.
On the relocation, I did want to, we have done relocation in your building.
Yes.
At Caffrey Towers.
Yes.
And I just wanted for Commissioner Sullivan to know there are three different things that can happen. Some people want to move. So we would say, you've already put an application in to move. If you want to go to Sullivan Towers, we'll move you over there and we move you. We pay for everything. There's no cost there. If you want to stay within the building, we have hotel units. We move the person there and then we move them back. Again, that's at our cost. And then obviously they're getting some vacancies. We always get, we get an average of about 18 vacancies a month in all of our buildings, and Campbell is the biggest. So we get 3 or 4 there. So those will empty out. People will not have to move out of the building if they do not want to. What I mean by that is, you know, we put them into a hotel unit and they want to go back to the unit, that's where they go. So
people have a, part of the process is people have rights. There's resident rights, and they have a right to return to their development. They don't. It's nothing optional about it. They have the right to come back. And one thing that really sort of what COVID has wrought on all of us, but on this process is that we would normally be having meetings. Quite a few meetings actually with residents to bring them up to speed on what we were finding. We've had to do that through newsletters and some information boards in the lobby. But normally we love talking to residents. And so this has been, I'm working on another project in Cambridge where it's the same condition. I have to call them up on the phone and I have to send them newsletters, and I can't sit down with them and talk with them as a group to find out, what their concerns are, but have been able to reach them individually. Be a different story. That was a building of 37, different story at Campbell for sure.
The residents been advised that they might be displaced and they can go back?
Yes.
Had they been talked to?
Yes,
we've
through
newsletters,
We've given them all newsletters. We've done question and answers. And when I say we did the newsletters in the multiple languages, we answered that question. One of the first questions is, will I still have a house? Yes, you will have a house and we will keep you there. Will my rent change? No, it will not change. We'll calculate your rent the exact same way. In the end, the residents won't know. In the end, they won't know any difference. It's complicated finances underneath, but in the end, they'll just have a better place to live.
Yeah.
Chris and Video.
Yes, as Tim said, Tim Smith, that this is, the residents have a tremendous amount of rights going through. We will do a relocation plan. They will be participating in that and answer all those questions. I mean, it's many, right down to the smallest things, right? I have oxygen delivered every Tuesday. How are we going to know about that? I have cable vision. I have, a Spanish language cable vision. Will I have that? We have to address all those type of things. And we've done it before and done it very well. And then there are companies that can assist us. And if I looked in the budget, I think there was $625,000 set aside for relocation assistance for our residents.
One other question, Tim Smith.
Yeah.
I was on this, your estimated value of proposed property is $23 million.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, so why would HUD want to put $106 million into a $23 million property?
It's because it's providing housing. It's a great question. It's a resource. It's an affordable housing resource. If that property, it's kind of, if that property was say downtown New York, it'd be worth a lot more, obviously. So I think I
just want to make sure the $23 million number is what's over in the assessor's office. That's not the real value. It's worth a lot more. What's the total development cost on it?
It would be well in excess of the $106 million.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it's the assessor's card value of the property, which is always significantly lower. And some of it is because it's an affordable housing resource, but even as public housing, it's worth much more than the $106 million that HUD would put into it, or Brockton would put into it.
Margaret, on that $106 million, is HUD would pay that entire thing, or would Brockton Housing have to do something?
Well, Brockton Housing Authority ultimately, is going to be the entity that would be responsible, and what it would be using would be a combination of taking the extra income that would come from the disposition and the full value Section 8 and going to a bank and getting a loan. And that would fund a portion of the renovation. The second thing that Brockton Housing Authority would do would be to use the low-income housing tax credit program, which is the investor is buying a benefit of tax credits from really the IRS, not even HUD. And in doing so, they give the Brockton Housing Authority, they're buying those tax credits, and they're giving the Brockton Housing Authority then the funds that it could use to renovate Campbell. And those are the exact two tools that Cambridge Housing Authority, as well as a number of other housing authorities, have been using to get the resources. Basically, it's a way to bring, and this is something HUD wants, it's a way for a housing authority to bring some private dollars to pay for much needed renovations. But the day-to-day ownership, the day-to-day operations and control will continue to be with the Brockton Housing Authority, and Brockton Housing Authority would be making all the decisions. And so, HUD's role in this is really, one, to approve it for the disposition, and two, to give those full value Section 8 vouchers. But then all of the decisions that will come from it from thereafter would be based on decisions that would be made at the local level by the Brockton Housing Authority and all of you.
Margaret, just one final question. Tom Tebow had mentioned that Brockton Housing Authority would sell it to Brockton Housing Authority.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that somebody could jump in the middle, like say with a higher bid?
No, I mean, not as part of this, not as part of the initial conveyance. It would be the Brockton Housing Authority would set up a limited liability corporation, and in the disposition approval from HUD would specifically say Brockton Housing Authority is selling it to this named entity. That is Brockton Housing Authority. The low-income housing tax credits, there are all kinds of nuances with that. And, Cambridge Housing Authority has, and the way it works is that the tax credit investor is getting the benefit of the tax credits over a 15-year period. And they have to have some connection to the property during that 15-year period. But then after that 15-year period, the property comes back to the housing authority. But when you're doing that, when you're making that deal right up from on day one, you have to be thinking about year 15 and making sure that you're putting all, I like to call them kind of belts and suspenders, to make sure that it's kind of bulletproof or foolproof, that the property comes back, that comes back 100% to the housing authority. And so Cambridge at this point has had a couple of properties go through that entire 15-year period and come back to the housing authority, as has many other housing authorities. We just happen to have just two because we started about 15 years ago, and a little over 15 years ago, and doing these types of transactions. And so you just have to do all of your front end work to make sure that you've put in, as I said, those belts and suspenders. But the industry is very developed, and in understanding of, to all of us, I think, we're stewards of these properties and stewards to the residents that live there. And we want to just absolutely make certain that, as you're asking, that the property is protected in the public interest and protected on the behalf of the housing authority. And so that those would be the things that, we certainly have a lot of experience with in Cambridge that would absolutely welcome to share with Brockton, but you would also work with really exceptional attorneys to make certain that as well.
One final question. Do you two stay on as this process goes on?
If you'll have us.
We have had, as both Kim and I've said, we really have enjoyed working. We think you have a great team at Brockton Housing Authority. I think we've been working really, really well together, but that's a question for your executive director and the BHA team to answer. But
yes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I can say this, but well, I'm going to say it anyway. So. So Cambridge Housing Authority's executive director is a gentleman called Mike Johnston, and he is a graduate of Brockton High School. And so this project is actually near and dear to him. When we actually came out, it's actually, I think, one of the last places we visited pre-COVID. I think we came down in February last year to visit. Mike Johnson came, and he had some high school reminiscence with some of the folks at the Brockton Housing Authority.
Oh,
and so, I think, the Cambridge Housing Authority really values its relationship with other housing authority partners. And I think it's a little extra special for Brockton because of that, that relationship.
So we're kind of cousins.
Yeah, twice removed.
Janet, he's from Campbell.
I know. He is?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
Campbell from Campbell Street. Sort of.
Oh, my goodness.
2 blocks away from you.
Yeah. So, and it's, I mean, but it really is, a determination that all of you would make and all, but, we certainly have appreciated and glad to have the opportunity to,
If I could answer that in more detail, Mr. Commissioner, we're going to need a lot of assistance, and Margaret spoke about attorneys. There are very specialized attorneys in this, and so as we go through those questions that you asked, we will be asking of these attorneys over and over and over again to ensure that the way this is set up does exactly what we want, which is, in simple terms, the Campbell high-rise becomes a better place to live. We're able to address all the capital needs. And the second part is the housing authority continues to manage the property. It's an asset to the city. The Board of Commissioners is appointed by the mayor and the governor, and that local control stays there. So it's something that will be very important as we go through. It will happen, but we will make sure that it happens, and we will have competent people. And as I said, the Cambridge Housing Authority has been a wonderful partner. The nice thing about them, whenever you get consultants that come in, the first thing they ask to see is your budget. And the reason they want to see a budget is they want to know where the money is they can charge you for. Now, when you're talking to the Cambridge Housing Authority, they have the same mission that we do. So they're looking, as Margaret said, we're looking to take care of our residents. That's what we do. And that's the most important. So it's a good partnership with them. They've really got a nice book, I'll call it, of people who have worked on this: attorneys, engineers, architects, environmentalists, all relocation specialists. So I think it would be in our best interest to continue to work with them.
Yeah. Not a question, Margaret, but just a follow-up. If you can tell that Mr. Johnson that Brockton High is in the middle of the exact same thing. It's 50 years old, and they're trying to do the building over. And they're way up into the $100 million. He'll be surprised to hear that.
Oh no, I actually shared the report with him because he's, he checks in every often to see how we're progressing, because he wants to make sure we're making him proud of the service that we're giving to Brockton Housing Authority. But this one, I think because of his own family history and having grown up in Brockton, I think it touches different him in a different way. So, but yeah, he's read the same report you guys did too.
Tim, are they tearing it down or just renovating it? Do you know?
No, renovating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, it isn't complete. They're not 100% sure what they're going to do right now.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's in the process of
massive
renovation.
Place.
Yeah.
Place.
It's the largest high school in the country.
Massive.
And yeah, no, I mean, I'm sure he drives through the whole neighborhood now and again.
Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I got a question.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes, this will go for Tim Smith. We were talking about $106 million to redo the building A and building B, correct?
Yeah.
All right. When you said disintegrate, demolition, it's like, so you guys going to be replacing from the water line, pipes, sprinkles, electric. So really go to the studs. That's my.
Yeah.
So the only thing you're gonna deal with it that's gonna left, it'll be the structure, even the structure of the building. You guys gonna readjust, do what you gotta do if it needs to weld or re-weld, whatever you need to do there to make sure structure. But everything else is coming down. Is that correct?
That's that. You know, it a lot depends on. Margaret and I went through a very similar project, actually. I mean, and since it was senior high-rise building in Cambridge, I'm working for the CHA now, but I was working as a private architect then. And you know, when you get a contractor on board or a construction manager, you know, one thing we became aware of is that you can go into a unit and it doesn't have enough electrical outlets, and the electrical code would require, for instance, that you add outlets. And so we talked about Swiss cheesing the walls, basically, you know, poking a hole, fishing wire. And the contractor said, forget it. Just, you know, we're going to have to abate every opening that we make in these walls. Let's just strip it down. So part of it is what's most cost effective and what's most effective in terms of the schedule, in terms of how much we take down. But with the issues of some of the structural reinforcing that we think we would have to do, yeah, a lot of that drywall is going to have to come out, and that removes a whole maintenance problem for maintenance folks in a sense that, you know, to do any work in the units now really, you know, should be done under abatement. You know, to cut into a wall is cutting into the drywall, is cutting into the the joint compound, is you know, is really almost an abatement action because it's putting asbestos dust possibly into the air. So it simplifies that for future repairs as well. So it's getting rid of two problems, and it ultimately makes it easier for the contractor to do their work.
So by saying that, then because you mentioned by doing section or by doing floors,
yeah,
you know, because I think that would be relocation for the tenants. It'll be a plus, because if you do section, you know, you might just cut water on section A, but section B still got people living there. How's that going to work? Because my way of looking, because I do a little bit here and there on my own, and I would think that, you know, if we can just, especially with the, like, if you want to do building A, we'll do just building A, relocate the tenants and just get it done. I think it'll be done quick. It'll be done more efficient, and instead worry about asbestos is if you still got tenants leaving the building. Yeah, it's dangerous. I would think.
Ideally, David, you're absolutely right. Ideally, there's nothing like an empty building to get, you know, to do the work. And it's just, you have to factor in that there's, you know, how many people, Tom, 550 or somebody, maybe it was Tim who said that. I think there are 400 units and 525 or 550 residents there. So if somehow the city of Brockton came up and said, I have 400 units here that people can move into and we can clear those buildings, yes, that would be the best thing. The reality of it in our experience is that those empty units don't grow on trees, so to speak, and they're hard to find, and it just requires, but no doubt we'd all prefer for the construction period would be shorter. The cross pads of residents and construction workers would be removed. You know, we've had to continue construction under COVID, so that complicated things, but just in a conventional construction zone, yeah, it'd be much better, but it's just the reality of trying to find enough places for people to move.
No, because we can only worry about one building. If we can worry about, like, say 200 units, say if we do building A, complete building A, and the people that's on building B move on to building A and do the complete on building B, then relocate the people that we took from building A to building B. I think that would be an idea also.
If the BHA, that would be up to you guys in terms of what is possible. I mean, we can certainly help brainstorm with you on that, but if you were able to do that, that'd be terrific. The more the bigger the phases or sub-phases within a project, the quicker the project will get done. And that's certainly an interest. It's just that, being sensitive to people who may still be living there and protecting them. But yeah, if you could clear out a building, that'd be ideal.
Yeah.
It's just finding those units.
Two separate buildings. I think we'll. All right, that was my question.
Yeah, and I just say that, in Cambridge, we have not yet come up with a strategy for our 200 unit buildings or bigger. And so we've had to do it in phase construction. We've been able to, in a couple of instances where the buildings have been 50 or 60 units, been able to, we have one just starting construction now, just started about a month ago. That was 59 units, and we're able to empty that entire building out and have it be one phase of construction. But our other properties that are, over 100 units, approaching the size of one of your buildings, 200 units, we've brought the occupancy down to about 65%, so that then we could do the renovation in kind of a checkerboard way, but as Tim said, floor by floor. It's, you wouldn't do this absent having no place else to put family, elders. But because their resources so critically needed and there's just no other place to put them, we very carefully do all of the things that you mentioned, which is, planning for the reconnection tie-offs of the new system to the old system, or things that are constantly, we're dealing with our contractors to make sure that we don't disrupt the services to our existing residents while being able to tie in the new stuff to the new units. And it's challenging work, and we'd absolutely want to do it in a vacant building, but not at the cost of anybody losing their home, as Executive Director Thibault said. And again, we've been able to do it. I mean, we do relocation using our own resources. So nobody ever loses their housing as a result of the renovation work. And that, like when we wrote all of our key things we were going to do, number one was no one was ever going to lose their housing. So we jumped through hoops and make sure that that we meet that requirement, and that sometimes makes for a much more complicated construction job as a result of it. But sometimes that's what it takes to actually move forward with the construction.
And I do want to make one other comment. Commissioner Teixeira is a developer.
So very skilled.
Yeah, Commissioner Teixeira, your cost would probably be half of what our cost would be, because of the regulations that we have to abide by. So there is, and this is something that Cambridge has advised us, that even in Chicago, where this application would go, they look at this and they say it's awful expensive, and we have to prove the cost of what it cost in Massachusetts to do things under prevailing wage and under the procurement laws that we have. So it is more expensive. It would be much easier to do one building and move the other. And if we could figure a way to do that out without harming any residents, I think it would be wonderful. I don't know if we'd be able to get there. That's an awful lot of people. And remember, we have a waiting list of a lot of people too. So the reason that HUD has done this is they saw that housing authorities were deciding to demolish, to get rid of, to board up, to get rid of units because they couldn't take care of them anymore. So now they've expanded it and said, well, look, here's an option to do this so you can maintain them and keep this very important and in high demand asset for low-income families there. So there'll be, by the way, we don't, if we get this application, then we have to get financing. And if we get the financing, then we get an architect and an engineer. Well, they'll be there beforehand because they'll have to show what we're going to finance. Right. But we haven't designed what will happen yet. We've just said, these are the problems. The next step would be for an architect and engineer to come in and say, okay, this is how you can solve all these problems. This is the best way to do it. And that's where we'd have that conversation. How many, now the architect engineer is going to say, we love Mr. Teixeira's idea. Empty the building. That will make everything a lot easier for us because they don't have to worry about those things. And we'll have those conversations. When I say we, the board in conversations like this about how we move forward.
So it's a more humane process that they're considering than has been done in the past. Is that correct? I mean, they're trying to salvage housing, low-income housing.
Yes, yes, yes. Remember, again, it wasn't too long ago, Lowell Housing Authority, I believe it was, right on the river, took down one of their developments because they just couldn't maintain it anymore. They said, let's get rid of it. Fall River tried to do it, and they were sued by the Archdiocese, and they weren't able to.
Wow.
Archdiocese, the Catholic Church, got called.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, I will say there are other, like some housing authorities are using, you know, either RAD or Section 18 to get out of the day-to-day operations of housing. So Baltimore Housing Authority, I'll point to them. You know, they've been a big user of the rental assistance demonstration RAD, and they basically have sold off all of their property, and now they're just really doing Section 8 administration. And you know, Cambridge Housing Authority, we chose, no, we're not out of the business. We're very much into the business. And I think one of the things that aligns so well between Cambridge and Brockton is Brockton has got the same feel. They don't want to lose their housing. They don't want to lose their role. They don't want to lose their ability to be the stewards of the housing. And I think that resonates with us because we've done all of this transition with our residents on board and supportive and with our staff in place. And I think not every housing authority can claim that.
Right. One question for Chris, Barry, and Vinny. What do you think of this whole thing?
I would love an empty building, but I know there's reality to that. You know, if we can do a couple floors at a time, that's, you know, that's probably what we're going to look at. To, you know, again, to empty 200 units, I would be 100% behind that. We would get. But
let me ask you a more general, Chris, what do you think about the concept of getting the money in to address the
issue? Think it's great. I think it's great. It's again, it's going to relieve everything off of Vinny's shoulders for quite a number of years. So
that's for sure.
All of our shoulders.
Yes. Yes.
So let me just, if I could answer that a little more for the board members. So if let's say we're not successful in this, and there's a chance we wouldn't be, we still know these things need to be done. And so Chris has to take his $3.8 million, which is the highest we've ever got by far, and figure a way to use $3.8 million to take care of $90 million worth of problems. And so that's all of our, I say Chris, but it's all of our problems. What's first? What do we have to do? Remember, we decided that well, I can tell you what would be first right away would be the roof. We've got to do the roof. We know that's going to fail sometime soon. It's already failed. It's just tacked down. We did the elevators because we knew those were failing. We know the balconies. We've got to address those balconies. They're just attached. You know, there's so many things. The exterior of the building is delaminating. That's eventually going to really start causing leaks all throughout the building. And then the residents, the poor residents are living in buildings where the storage pipes are breaking all the time. And that means they get leaks. So the water leaks down, it's storage water. And so this is all stuff we have to take care of. So my answer for the Chris and Vinny, because right now it's just, hey, get it done, guys. Get it done with the resources you have. And at times they say, I don't have the resources. Well, get it done anyways. And so that's what we're doing, and that's what Margaret and Tim are talking about, how the job they're doing to get it done with the limited resources. So that's really why we're looking at it. If we could just apply to HUD and say, look, this is how much we need, send it to us in regular subsidy, that would be a lot easier. But they don't have the money. I'm not blaming. That's, you know, it's a national problem that we have to solve locally.
And I just say that, you know, every time a door closes, you know, Cambridge is trying to figure out another door to get through. You know, I think we started trying to solve this exact problem before there was really any tools, trying to figure out how we could try to move forward to do the renovation work. I think, you know, at some point we figured out that it was going to take us no, it's going to take us 32 years to do $228 million worth of work that needed to be done right now in our portfolio of about 3,000 units. And we couldn't wait 32 years because by then the number would be astronomical or we would have lost units. And so we put our first disposition application in, I think it was 2012. And it was an immediate no. In fact, like it was a 2 week, not even 2 weeks later, the letter came, said it was a no. But I think part of it was that we had some mistakes in uploading the application. And so then we went through a whole process with HUD that ended up making RAD work for half of our portfolio, which when RAD first came out for Cambridge didn't work. But because we had a failed disposition application, it brought us to the table to the folks at HUD in Washington and really Chicago too, to figure out, all right, how can we make it work in a high cost, high market like the Northeast, like the Boston area. And then when RAD stopped working for us, we pivoted and found another way. I mean, and so, you know, I'm hopeful that the Section 18 application will work for Brockton Housing Authority. But, you know, I think what this will prove, you know, it's just the start of whatever it's going to be that is going to be needed to get Campbell's needs addressed. And if they don't answer the dock at the Section 18 door, then we'll roll up our sleeves and we'll try to figure out some other avenues for Brockton Housing Authority and the residents of Campbell.
Any other questions? Item 10.
Yes, Tim, I have one question.
Sure.
Commissioner Pettiford.
To Martha Tammy Thorne. The foundation down there on those buildings, were they built on wetland? Has that been looked into?
As much as we could. We noticed that it's going to take a little bit more investigation, but we noticed one condition in one of the community rooms. There was some subsidence, you know, almost a heaving in the slab. So we didn't notice it anywhere else. And we looked at throughout some of the other first floor areas, but it definitely needs to be looked at. You know, the flooding issue. You know, if you were to try to build there today, you could, but you'd have to put parking at that level and put everything on top of it. You couldn't put any habitable space within that zone, according to HUD. I just finished a project a year ago down in Connecticut. It was the same issue. We had to raise everything up. So you know, we had a civil engineer look at it. He's come up with some ideas. You know, the whole flooding issue itself is a regional in that neighborhood. It's a neighborhood issue, and we can't really change grades in there because it would push water off onto your neighbors. You can't do that. So we'd have to come up with some ideas to protect the building, especially if it's there to stay, and figure out ways to protect the building, but also see if there's any other kind of damage as you've raised, Mr. Pettiford, about the foundation. But I think it's, you know, they've been there for 50 years. And so I think that the foundations are probably maybe our least concern at this point.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions? Item 10. We need a motion from somebody and a second. Item 10.
I make a motion to approve resolution number 21-01 to authorize the executive director to submit a Section 18 application for the disposition of the Campbell high-rise project 24-6 in AMP2 to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development as written.
Second it.
A motion has been made by Commissioner Janet Trask, seconded by Commissioner Ernest Pettiford. Motion is to approve resolution 2021-01 to authorize the executive director to submit a Section 18 application for the disposition of Campbell high-rise project 24-6 in AMP2 to the U.S. Department of HUD as written. Any questions on the motion from anybody? Was that a question?
No.
Roll call, Mr. Tebow.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera,
Yes.
Commissioner Trask,
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Margaret.
Good choice.
Thank you, board members.
Margaret, Tim. Thank you.
Okay.
Guys.
Thank you very
Done a
much.
nice job explaining it. It come out
Okay,
good.
thank you. Thanks. We'll be in touch.
Okay.
Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 11, old business. Any old business? Hearing none. Item 12, new business. Any new business?
I have one item that I would just like to bring up. As you know, COVID is getting better. I'm very optimistic about where we're going on this. Probably not next month, maybe not even April, but I'd like to, even if we can't meet in the boardroom, we'll get a tent, you know, a canopy and set up in May outside and have us come together as a board and actually have people be able to come to our meeting. It's been an awful long time. Housing Authority shut down seeing people on March 12th, so a year.
Oh, yeah.
I know you're going through the same thing at the school department, Mr. Chairman, as far as the length, but I would really like to be, but I bring this up because if you're uncomfortable with it, please let me know. But I'm looking for when the weather would be good, would have a canopy big enough that we could have the board there and have a guest come.
Nice idea.
All right, we'll talk about it the next time and I'll make plans for it.
Just one other hopeful comment, just in this whole big document about Campbell, but I noticed that they say 5 family self-sufficiency families will purchase a new home in 2021.
Yes, that's for my annual plan. That's Cynthia has to put a goal out every year. She's met it every year. And I don't know how they're buying houses in this market, but they are.
Amazing.
Tom, I don't know if I told you, but the school committee is going back to regular meetings at the high school starting March 2nd.
No, you did not tell me that.
Yeah, I just got the phone call today. No more remote. It's going to be in person at the high school. Any other new business or any questions on the new business?
Just a question. I know they're doing vaccine.
Fiscal.
Hello. I know they're doing vaccine. How comfortable are you gonna, especially if we're going back to have meeting, not a Zoom meeting, but if we're going back, and how comfortable you will be if you're not vaccinated?
So there will come a time where that will be your choice, right? It's not right now. So lots of people can't get it, but you've chosen not to be vaccinated. And that would be a personal choice. I feel comfortable not being vaccinated, living in this community, living in this society. But again, that's why I'm asking if May is too soon for people feeling comfortable and they're not vaccinated by that time, that's fine. What I imagined is, you know, that none of us would be within 6 feet of each other. I know that's how the school committee does it, and no resident would be, no guest would come within 6 feet of anybody, would have, you know, the chairs set up that way. But again, it's something that I'm putting out there for each individual board member to consider. I've seen this happen where 3 board members show up in person and 2 come in by Zoom. We could do that too. So it would just, again, trying to take steps to operate better. We are, in my report, I can tell you we're not operating as well as we would if everybody was at their desk every day.
No, it's not because I don't want a vaccine. Believe me, as soon as it's available for me, I'll be right there again. I'm just saying. No, very good question. I put it out there. People feel different about it. People have their own, you know, medical conditions, their own anxieties, their own concerns. At some time, though, and the reason I say this, I've said it to our employees. At some time, we're going to open up the doors. And we're going to open up the doors when the governor says it's all right to do it and everybody has had the opportunity to be vaccinated. Tim, you're dealing with this with the school teachers, right? They're saying, go first. If you choose not to be vaccinated, we're still going to open up the doors. You've made that choice to say that I believe that the risk of the vaccination is higher than, you know, dealing with everybody else. I don't know, again, whatever personal reasons they have, but, you know, I don't get into that. Just.
Well, you know, Tom, I also think people really need to understand what the vaccination is all about. Because some people getting the vaccination thinking by getting it, they won't get COVID-19. And that's not the fact that the medical has said in the past. It is to help you body to build up the antibiotics against it, but you can still catch the COVID-19 after the vaccinations. And
Yes,
they
you
make
can.
that quite known.
Yeah, you can. And so and we do have to do a lot more education on that. It's opposed to, if you do get it, it would be a lot less
Yeah,
susceptible.
your body builds up resistance, but it doesn't mean you can't catch it.
Right.
Tim, is that a decision made by the superintendent that you guys are going to meet?
No, the vice chairman
The vice chairman.
Yeah.
of the school committee.
And what did the other members say to that?
It's all agreed. There's going to be no people, just the board will be there.
Okay.
And the 7 of us, so they can move 6 feet.
Yep.
Each direction.
Okay.
Tom, one question, final. Would this board be considered employees as far as the shots are going?
Yes.
Could they be called?
Yes.
Next time it can be done?
Yes.
I don't know if
we were short this week, very short. If we were able to get extra doses for next week, if that happens, I will be contacting you.
Yeah, I don't have to be, because I'm already going to Gillette on the 15th for my second shot.
Yes.
But the rest of the people.
I'm waiting for the 1 shot.
You're waiting.
Coming, Ernie.
Yeah.
I heard Sunday.
As we were here, and I haven't opened up an email, but I did get something for Janet Fitzgerald. We were working on how to do homebound people. We're working with Brewster Ambulance and the Council on Aging on getting, so there'll be people who can come to us. There are people who can come to our community room, and then the people will actually go to their apartment or their home.
Oh.
But people would still have to meet criteria, correct?
Yes, right now it's over 65 years old, or be a member, live in public housing, elderly disabled, or be an employee or a volunteer for a public housing authority.
So we're considered volunteers?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Item 13, we need a motion from somebody.
Motion to adjourn.
Second that motion.
A motion's been made by Commissioner David Texera, seconded by Commissioner Ernest Pettiford. A roll call, Mr. Thibault.
Commissioner Roberts.
Yes.
Commissioner Texera.
Yes.
Commissioner Trask.
Yes.
Commissioner Pettiford.
Yes.
And Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Meeting's adjourned. Good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Great meeting.
Bye.
Bye.